Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe, the show. I am your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr., local pediatric dentist here in Clarksville native, just telling the story of the people who are in this town who make it the best place to live in America. Thanks for hopping on another episode, whether you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, you happen to be watching it on YouTube, however you came across this episode, we're glad that you're a part of it. We would really appreciate any feedback that you give us, whether that's a like, a subscribe, a share, any kind of comments. That really helps us grow our audience, helps us tell this story of the amazing people who are here doing great things every day in and out of Clarksville to make this the best place to live in America. Today's guest is somebody that I've known for a really long time. Our history goes back all the way to when we were 7 or 8 years old playing recreational soccer against each other. He's someone that I've just had a tremendous amount of respect for over the years. He is as authentic of a person as you'll ever meet. When you see him, when you meet him, that is who he is, and that's always he's just raw and authentic. He's a loving guy. I don't know that he's ever had a bad day in his life, and if he has, he will not let you know it because his smile is contagious, and he just, is one of those guys that brightens up a room wherever he goes. It's Dillon Jennings.
That's fantastic.
Thanks for jumping on, man. One of my longest friends, one of the guys that I've, when we were growing up, we kind of had a similar parallel path, and just
fierce competitors.
Fierce competitors.
For
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get there at some point in the story. Well, this show is really about telling the story of the people who are making Clarksville the best place to live in America. So you've been on my list from day one of people that I had to include on this. You're doing a crazy, amazing, cool thing with this Bankin Festival that is coming up. And so I want to spend a lot of time on that. Obviously, you are adding value in our community, how you parent your kids, what you're doing with them, kind of, you were a wrestling superstar hero
Here we go.
in our days, and now you're coaching, you're doing cool things like that, and obviously you're just, you're kind of, you're one of those guys like I am. We grew up here, we spent some time away, had a little bit of a professional career somewhere else, and then came back and called Clarksville home by choice, and so I'm really excited to update our listeners, our viewers on you so they can hear more about you.
Kevin, I would just first say I feel so humbled to be here. Legit, like between you and the other people, I've been listening to some of the other podcasts, and Lanus and Eric and people that I don't know that aren't necessarily from Clarksville. That I'm just like, oh my gosh, like when am I gonna say anything good? But like everything, I really appreciate it, and I think so much of you and what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, shoot, I came on here really because I wanted to be a part of it. Yeah. You asked me, but also Bankin Festival.
Yeah,
really
let's talk about it.
I mean, I hate talking about me.
Yeah,
if you
let's talk
honest.
about Bankin
But,
Festival
yeah, so-
because it's a new event. It's a festival, so let's just
right.
call it, right?
That's right.
It is not something that is going on in Clarksville anywhere else at any point in time of the year. This is unique, right? This is the second year of the festival.
That's right.
So let's talk about it in different phases. First of all, when somebody hears Bankin Festival, they may not know what it is, right? They might think it's a money deal, this or that. Is it from the bank? What is it? And what do you do there?
I almost feel like should we go back to how Bankin Festival gets put on?
Let's do it, sure.
So and maybe that'll help answer too, like because Bankin Festival literally was just God put that in my mind literally in a half a second.
Yeah.
I didn't even intend for it to actually be the name of the festival.
Okay.
So,
but it will forever be the Bankin
but that's
Festival.
what
it's now the thing.
That's what it
that's
is
right,
now.
Yeah.
So, and really in my mind, all I thought was, we're on a canoe.
Yeah.
And we're floating, and you're paddling down the river, and then everybody's like, "All right, we're banking."
Yeah.
And so you hit the bank.
The phrase.
It's
stuck.
I don't know. That's what we said. Maybe other people have a different thing for that, but hey, we're banking.
Yeah.
And so the idea was to have this festival and have it more of like a outdoor on a riverbank type setting with the option of like an outfitter to run you up in a paddle in a boat, and then you could end at the festival. So that's kind of how it all evolved quickly in my brain, and never thought it would stick.
Yeah.
But so that's how it went.
Well,
God put it in there.
Most of our listeners engage in the first part of the episode, so we really got to hit them with some details.
Okay.
Why do they want to be there? What is it going to be about?
So here's the thing. Let's just go straight to this. So I'm fortunate to be a part of a group called the Coalition. It's a small nonprofit group of guys in Clarksville. We can get into that more. And the purpose of the coalition is to simply raise funds for women and children charities in the Clarksville community.
I love that.
And so Bankin Festival, the big why is to have fun and all that, but really the bigger why is to raise money for Urban Ministries Safe House. And the Safe House is it's a domestic violence shelter in Clarksville. And so they serve women and children that have been, in that terrible situation. And I mean, I could go on. I could throw out statistics, but I can't understate that enough. Like that's just
because that's your why.
That is the why. It's like, man, there are people there's all kinds of different people that are in need of help, and so that's what we want to do is just be men that step up and try to give back some of our time and talent to serve those that need some help. And so Bankin Festival, 100% of so we're a group of guys that knew a little bit about throwing parties. So we thought, okay, so then that led into the festival. Yeah. And so, so 100% of the proceeds are going towards the Safe House. And so what is Bankin Festival? Bankin is, it's been really important to us that we create an experience that is unique to Clarksville. Clarksville's got a ton of great venues, great things going on, like all that, don't want to take anything away from that. We wanted to add another option.
Sure.
Shoot, there's a ton of people in this town looking for great things to do. That's
right, yeah.
So we wanted to add a unique festival, and so this year we've got 6-7 bands that are lined up. It starts at 12. It'll run till about 10:30 at night. Yeah. There's going to be a ton of art vendors. I'm thinking about 5 to 6 food trucks. Yeah. It's a family-friendly environment. There will be cold beer there, but last year if you were there, I think my son ran around with no shoes and no shirt for about 11 hours. Yeah. And so it's just great for everyone.
It's just a fun time.
Yeah. But that's a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I went last year. I didn't get to stay too long. I didn't get to stay the whole day. But from the very beginning of it, when I pulled up, so it's held at Port Royal,
that's right? That's right.
So you get this idea of banking along the river where Run Amok is, right. And you kind of canoe, kayak, whatever, come up down the river. But when I pulled up, I was like, oh, this is serious, because I came primarily to support, right? I know the people who are doing it. That. I know you put a lot of work into it. I don't know what this is really going to be about, but let me roll through.
I'm going just because I know people tried
right?
hard
And they tried hard. I'll be there. From the minute that I turned left right there on the Port Royal Road, I realized like this is serious. And this was just year one. So when I'm telling you as an audience here that this is something that you want to go ahead and mark on your calendars, what's the date?
September 10th.
September the 10th. I don't know exactly the date that this is airing.
It's a Saturday.
If you can mark it down right now, this is something that is incredibly unique to Clarksville. There's nothing that's going on like this at another location at another time. Unique to Clarksville, and it is really, really well done. I think your family's going to have a lot of great time. If you come by yourself, kind of like I did, I still found it to be a lot of fun. Awesome. And so I'm really excited about it this year. And so you mentioned things that sometimes when big festivals, events get mentioned and people are trying to promote them, they kind of underscore how cool it is. But this is one of those really, really cool events. I mean, large stage, think music concert kind of deal, several bands, several food trucks there all day. Lots of people last year brought their RVs or their campers or whatever.
And we'll have that option as well again.
Lots of tents, lots of just a family communal outdoor type festival. And honestly, it wasn't like, I've never been to Bonnaroo, but it wasn't like overwhelming like Bonnaroo where you just felt maybe uncomfortable with the overload of people. It was enough people where you enjoyed it, but it was kind of also a large enough space
exactly
where you can just feel free and sit down and hang out with this, throw a frisbee, play some cornhole, do whatever you wanted to do. And ticket price to get in was super reasonable.
$10.
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, even stuff like, you probably remember we had the 2 big graffiti walls.
Yeah.
Like we want people to come and experience and get to do like their own art while they're there.
Sure.
And so, yeah, but the kids, we're going to have some stuff for the kids. There's going to be alcohol, but it's really important to us that, yes, people can, have a good time, but also it's a clean, Bonnaroo is fantastic. It's a great thing, but this isn't something where you show up and you feel like you can't bring your kids as well. So
yeah, and that's what I feel like is important to communicate. Is sometimes you when you're like we are and you have younger families, you never quite know, is this like a adults only kind of thing, or is this a whole I'm telling you right now, Bankin Festival is a family kind of deal, and your kids will enjoy it as much as you do, if not more.
Absolutely.
And it's a safe environment, great people to be around. That's awesome. I know we're looking forward to it. So I know you were getting here, but you started to talk about the coalition. So I want to talk a little bit about how did that get started and what's important to you about it, and why did you kind of rely on these guys particularly to help you accomplish your why of giving more exposure to resources to Safe House?
So coalition, it's one of those things where I'd say, God is kind of, so I want to give it to him because it's one of those things that he kind of put on my heart several years back that just, and still to this day, it's like, we need the world to be it's kind of that saying, the world to be a better place when it has more good men, or the more good men there are, the better the world will be, kind of thing. And even on a smaller scale, like the way we change the world is in our own community. And there's another saying I heard. This is actually a guy I went to college with. He's my age, but he was always beyond his years, probably because he had good parents, but his name was Earl. And he just said, hey, my parents always, or he would say, hey, if everyone would just find one way to serve their local community, everything would change. Just one way, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. It could be you know how to, shoot basketball, and so you go and help with whatever it is. And so all these things kind of were going on in my head and then also kind of combined with organizations like Shriners and BWC and some of these organizations that have just done such tremendous amount of good. And I personally knew a lot of good men and friends, young men and older for that matter, but that weren't a part of that. I wasn't. I mean, I certainly was serving in some ways, but I just thought, man, we're a lot better too when we unify, when we come together, because I've got certain talents and Kevin, you got certain talents. And then if we can bring them all together, then we can really create some positive momentum. So long story short, I had this idea. And then one day I was talking with Daniel Brooks and a couple other guys that, hey, this is something we should do, and just kind of threw it out. And didn't really, So then 3 days later, thankfully for Daniel Brooks, he hits me up and he's like, hey man, I love that idea. And, we should do it. We're going to do it. And I'm like,
awesome.
Let's do it. I've been waiting for someone, thank goodness. And that's one of the great things about Daniel is he's one of those guys where it's when he gets an idea, he starts charting it out, which me, I'm more fly by the seat of my pants a little bit. So we just made a plan to, by the end of the year, have some forward momentum. And I invited 4 or 5 guys. He invited 4 or 5 guys. Most of them didn't know each other.
Wow.
And, 8 months after that group first met, we threw Bankin Festival and raised several thousands of dollars. And it was one of those things I remember when and we've got other events that we're going to do too. But right now we're focused on Bankin Festival, kind of making it really good. But I remember probably about June or July of last year when it was one of those things where the word was actually out and we were going, oh gosh, are we really doing this?
Have we done?
And our wives
are really going to be people that show up.
Really?
Yeah.
Y'all think you can do this?
I can't even count on you to unload the dishwasher.
Because essentially, we're kind of a bunch of ragtag guys,
knuckleheads.
Yes. And
what I love that you said is, you said this earlier, is that there's already pieces in this community of men, women who are doing great things, but there's always room to add value into it. And so to kind of have the courage to be able to say, hey, I know these people, I know these guys are very talented. They have lots of resources, whether it's relationships, whether it's connections, whether it's just drive, talent, whatever it may be. And together we can really achieve more. That whole team acronym, right? Absolutely. Together we achieve more. And you've got most of these people that I know that are a part of the coalition, decades plus long relationships with them. So you all just want to see each other win. You all want to help each other out, support each other.
And I know we don't have, we can't get into all the depths of this, but there's another thing too, just inside of me as as a man too that there's something like deep inside of us that calls us to like mission.
Sure.
And women probably the same. I can't speak on their behalf, obviously, but for me, like being a part of a squad that's working, and obviously we have fun together and all that, but being a part of a team where we're working towards a mission, it's just there's something deep in us that it's good.
We thrive on
good
purpose.
for the soul. You know?
Absolutely. I love that. And you know, creating something new doesn't mean taking something away. You know, Bikers Who Care toy run, their
100.
rally, like it's going to be just as successful
100.
as Bankin takes away nothing from that.
No.
And so we just add value. And I had that thought when I first started this podcast, and you know, when we first kind of got together with some people to talk about Clarksville Vibe as a platform overall, because I thought the same thing. Like, we've got local Clarksville, we've got VIP Clarksville, we've got the Leaf Chronicle, Main Street, Clarksville Now. Like, what in the world can we really contribute to this? Yeah. And you kind of get down on yourself, but then you realize Clarksville's such a special place. There's more people moving here all the time. We can add value into it in a unique way and not take away from anything that these other great companies, organizations, nonprofits are doing.
And on top of that too, Kevin, to me, I love Coalition. Don't get me wrong; those are my guys.
Yeah,
I'm not here to try to tell anybody. I mean, sure, we'd love to have new members. You know, I've tried to get you to come join us. But I'm here to encourage anybody to start your own or go join something.
That's right.
There's no surplus of like too many people helping give back to our community and make it better.
That's right. Yeah, Chase Knott, he had an episode with us, and he referenced that verse in the Bible where Jesus is talking about the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And so we want to encourage people to kind of move into that laborer mentality. So let's talk a little specifics on the people that are there in the coalition. Because I mean, these they have to be interesting meetings, right?
They're going to jump me Thursday night if I don't mention at least 2 or 3 of their names.
That's funny. All right. So who's the visionary? The guy that is just like throwing out ideas where everybody's like, dude, did he just say that out loud? Let's reel him back in. Great idea, but let's reel him back in. And you're one of them. So anybody else that you put into this pool, like, they're in good company.
I would say realistically that'd be me. Jacob Crass is he's like the good devil on my shoulder.
That's hilarious.
That's just like, I'll be throwing out stuff and they'll be like Matt Stokes and Jay Yarbrough and Daniel will be like, oh God, they'll just be freaking out. And Jacob will be like, hey, we can do that. Yeah. You know, and I'm like, we can do it.
I think we can make that work.
That's funny. But yeah, I would put Jacob Crass in there. We call Jacob Daddy Warbucks in the club. That's what we call him, because he's just always just making it rain goodness in the organization.
That's
if
awesome.
You know Jacob, he's awesome.
So who is the massager of personalities, like the conflict diffuser, right? You know? And I'm not saying there's a bunch of conflict, but you know, there's always one person in a larger group that's like, guys, it's cool. Look, we're gonna be good.
I kind of think Jeff Oakland.
Jeff
Oakland. He Jeff is really good at just kind of waiting for his moment to speak, and then
patient, quiet,
because it's usually me, Daniel, battling, and Jay, and I would say so Jeff Oakland, and then also Matt Stokes. Matt Stokes is so Jeff's really good at kind of waiting and then be like, hey guys, it's gonna be all right. Yeah. And then Matt Stokes, no one knew this when Matt got brought in. Me and Matt coached wrestling together.
Yeah.
And I was like, Matt, I don't even know what you do, but you got to be a part. And so Matt is just the most super dialed organizational. So he shows up with his laptop and he's talking about like, what does he call it? A rail. Okay. Do you know what a rail is? But running action plan or whatever. There's an acronym.
Some rail. Letters that make that work.
Yes. And he's just like to-dos for the next, like what we need to follow up on.
My next question is who's the guy, because also in this, like, there's got to be somebody that picks up the leftover Easter eggs that got pulled in. That's awesome.
If not for Matt Stokes, we would have achieved nothing, literally nothing.
I would ask you who's the best looking, but we all know that that's Isaac Zilkowski.
Oh God, right? That hair, I mean, alone, and the height.
You really don't want to show up.
I can't compete with
out
him,
in public
never.
with him. Yeah,
I try to keep him away from my wife, actually.
Yeah, he's the guy that you put on the videos. So whatever marketing material that you got to come up with. Just throw Isaac out there.
Yeah, no, he's awesome.
That's good. Well, I mean, I know that I'm excited. My dental practice is going to be a part of it. You know, we're going to be out there and hopefully giving some kids the entertainment, you know, over the weekend. That's going to be fun. But so you mentioned as you got these guys together, this idea of Bankin is just kind of came up to you, and you've mentioned that there's some other things coming along, but Bankin's the biggest thing. So was it kind of just a unanimous agreement? Like, hey, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it.
So what happened was,
this is the great intro line to every good story.
So me and Daniel invite these guys over to his building. They don't even know what they're really showing up for. It was like we were about to invite them into a pyramid scheme or something. Yeah. And I actually put a PowerPoint presentation together, Kevin. I'm dead serious. And so, you know, just kind of told them our mission, what we're wanting to do, and then a couple ideas of events. Yeah. I'm not releasing the second one. It's top secret. And I actually think it'll be a bigger undertaking, but we're not there yet because we're still trying to get good at something that we think we could pull off. And so, so I had like a location that we thought we'd put it at, and Bankin Festival, because and I thought they would change the name. Yeah. And then the next meeting, they all showed back up like, yeah, we're in. And they're like, what's wrong with Bankin Festival? I like it. And we're
Let's
like,
go for it.
Great, move on. You know, next topic. I think Bankin just stuck because it's something that we were all kind of familiar with doing. I grew up around, my father's a BWC member. I grew up going to the Austin Peay, like, it was a cookout out at the Ringgold Mill.
Okay.
I'm sure, your father's been there. But so we're, hanging out with Harold Darnell and Jim Durrett and my dad and some of those guys that were cooking back in the day and throwing, these benefits. And so I kind of grew up around that culture, and it's just part of who I am now too. So it seemed like an easy thing for us to take on.
Make it happen.
Or the most likely to succeed at.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about you as a person, kind of your history in Clarksville. I know Bankin's going to be fun. We'll bring it back in at the very end. But, I mentioned in the intro, you were a wrestling superstar. So I feel like this is a good time to share in public. I've never really said this out loud, but this is the honest truth. Like, you're the reason that I never tried wrestling. So you're obviously like, at Clarksville High, I went to Northeast and then I went to Rossview. As I transitioned to Rossview, there's no wrestling program. So they're looking for guys who are relatively skinny, that are like moderately athletic. And they're like, walking up and down the halls and like, great. Hey man, you should wrestle. Come out here and wrestle with us. People that you and I know together. Yeah. And I had this thought and I was like, no, not even going to try, because there's a chance that I will be in the same weight class as Dillon Jennings, and I will never recover from the embarrassment that he will put, the legends of your...
you would have probably been this... I'd have faded off into oblivion if you'd have showed up.
There was like mythical, like a storm of just stories of you eating rice cakes in the Clarksville High cafeteria with like the shredded physique and,
I will say my father, when I was a whopping 90-pound freshman and was starting at 103 pounds and was trying to gain weight, my father actually would make me like Rocky shakes, like straight up, Carnation instant breakfast with a couple raw eggs in it every morning.
Every morning. Just gain some weight.
With an egg sandwich on the side, but
I mean, all jokes aside though, you had tremendous success. I mean, Clarksville High at that time, its wrestling program is really something that was very, very special. Right before you, Matt McCarty was, kind of a legend. Your grade kind of continued that. Jason Pennington, Chris Turner, these guys really kind of extended that. What was it that made Clarksville High wrestling program so special at that time?
I'm a firm believer that leadership and coaching. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't me. I mean, it wasn't Chris, Jason,
Wade Hadley.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody. Well, let me back up. Caleb Midget, just a fun story. The only reason I ended up in wrestling, I knew nothing of wrestling. I was a soccer player. Yeah. And rolled into freshman orientation at Clarksville High, and we listened to the little, it's like a week before school starts. And Caleb Midget, who was the ASB president, student body president, whatever you call it. I'm trying to remember all these things. But anyways, he had kind of welcomed us all in. Right. Well, so then we're walking around the tour, and he comes up to me. He just picked me out as the little guy. And he's like, "Hey, man, you know, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "What's going on, man?" You know, and he's
don't beat me up.
He's like, "Well, hey, we're gonna I'm captain of the wrestling team, and we're gonna win a state championship this year." This is literally what he said. And I'm tell you what, Caleb Midget is he's an ant. Like he is one of those guys. Super successful as well. But anyways, he said, we're going to win a state championship this year, and we need a lightweight. And, you know, you ought to come check it out. It's right around the time, and you'll know this. So Blake Morris.
Yes.
Me and Blake, we're like coming out of 8th grade. It was the first time in my life I thought I wanted to lift weights. Blake had a little, you remember those old school, you know.
Just a chest press?
The little chest press you would have in your like bedroom.
That's right.
Blake had one, so we were up there getting yoked, you know.
93 pounds.
Actually, probably like 87 at that point. And so this guy seems pretty charismatic.
Yeah.
You know, invites me to come work out. They were lifting preseason. I'm like, all right, I'll go home. I told my mom, and I'm like, I'm gonna go lift this evening with the wrestling team. They're like, cool. I run into Jeff Jordan. Back to the leadership thing. Jeff Jordan.
He was the head coach at the time.
Was head coach. Just an absolute amazing human that's changed tons of lives in Clarksville for the better, and that ripple is still going. But yeah, I mean, Jeff had created a culture of hard work. We were not Clarksville High Wrestling. If you're in the community back in those days, we were not the most technically savvy wrestlers. There's plenty of schools that were technically better, but don't get me wrong, we knew some stuff. Yeah. But more than anything, Jeff had just basically made it to where you know, if he said run through that wall, you'd be over there running through the wall. And just the work ethic and the weightlifting, I mean,
just powerful.
It was, and that is really what kind of, I don't know if we want to go here, but really, you know, right now, Jason and I are working with wrestling, and that's one of the things I love about sports in general is, and so another area is just sports, man, just like, they're so good. I feel like sometimes sports have gotten a bad rap, and it's like, man, sports are such a good thing for kids when they're in, you know, kept in the right spot, of course. And
you mentioned Jason. That's Jason Pennington, who's also a part of the festival, but he was he the heaviest weight class?
Yes, so Jason was the heavyweight. Yeah. It's funny,
so you got you and Jason kind of bookends of the wrestling team.
Well, yeah, and even further back, me and Jason used to pitch for the Cardinals in Little League, and I was like the smallest right-handed pitcher in the league, and I couldn't throw it hard, but I could throw it straight. And then Jason would come in the biggest left-handed pitcher.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But yeah, Jason had a tremendous amount of success, and Jason's a fantastic coach. But he did well. Jason and I went on to wrestle at UT Chattanooga together. Wow. But to answer your question, I mean, Clarksville wrestling was awesome. It's coming back around, and I really give the credit to Jeff Jordan, Sherrod Cobb, Artie Manning, who the building's named after. Those coaches, they could have turned you into a state champ, Kevin. They really could have. I mean, so leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned that. I've never met Coach Jordan. He's kind of a legend in town. I've never had the chance to meet him, but he transitioned from wrestling to soccer at some point and did the same thing.
Exactly.
And so as just kind of an observer of the athletics community, I want to see our teams have success and win. That is what just blew my mind, that he had the skill and the talent to be able to develop players, develop athleticism, put a team together, and create something that really no other program was achieving at that time. Clarksville Wrestling was the wrestling program in Clarksville. When he was head coach of Clarksville Soccer was the program achieving more things than anybody else achieved.
He went on to win a state championship.
Right.
I mean,
amazing.
And I mean, Clarksville's wrestling program in the early 90s was very non-existent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, he is pretty fantastic, his story. I mean, cattle farmer, hardworking man. Oh my gosh, he would talk about, I mean, I don't even know if this is okay, but you know, he would talk about how hernias. You got a hernia? You better push that thing back in. He's
don't care.
He's tough. You know, but that was the mentality.
Yeah.
It was just, suck it up, suck it up.
So, as like I'm preparing for this episode, I send you a little guide like, hey, what's important for you to kind of include. I always ask for book recommendations. You send me this book that is In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. Yeah. So I'm like thinking back to what I know of you. And now that you bring up this, like, you got a hernia, like, let's go. Like, to me, that sounds like In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day type mentality. And I don't even know what the book's about. So you got to share with me, like, where did this book come from? Like, how was it meaningful to you?
Another man in the community that I have just a tremendous amount of respect for, Trent Knott, actually recommended that book to me. And I'm a slow reader, so it took me a little bit. But that book,
there are a lot of jokes on
and
there.
It's funny. It's a God sovereignty thing, because he gave me that book around the same time that Coalition was kind of getting on its feet.
Okay.
And if you read that book, that book is about God loves to show up in situations that seem to be impossible. Mm. So, Kevin, you might decide, well, I'm going to, start a podcast. And, you got those voices that you're like, that are saying, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You
Nobody's going to listen to you.
No, you're not good enough, whatever. And whatever it is, if you're starting a new career, if you're going to be whatever it is going on in your life. And so, but those are the things that when they're when they're in line with God's will, those are the things you actually need to do. Mm. Because that's the time where God actually loves to show up and show his power. Yeah. But and even more because you knew it wasn't because of you, it was because of him.
Yeah, that actually I had a mentor when I was in dental school living in Memphis at the time. He used the phrase, God loves to stack the deck against himself, right? And so when you read the stories of the salvation of Israel, or you see God showing up in miraculous ways, it's often framed from the context of like literally every little bit of human ingenuity, ambition, talent has been stripped away, and there is literally no conceivable way to rationalize that the humans involved in this story made this thing come about. Like, it was so stacked against their favor. Gideon's army, for example, right?
You go from 30. God.
It's only God, right?
Exactly.
And so I love that you bring that up. Anybody that's listening, you got to find that book. If it's Trent Knott's recommendation,
it's In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark Batterson.
Yeah,
and it is a super simple read, and it is just full of great. One of my favorite lines in that book, and we can get off of it, is oftentimes good is the enemy of great. Mm-hmm. And that one was one that hit me. I'm like,
punch you in the face.
It's complacency with, things are pretty good.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to take a step into something risky, and that's the enemy. It's like, no, man, take a step into that to get to that greatness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well, I've got an incredible amount of respect and admiration for you, because anyone who takes that idea of saying, this is a principle. I believe together we can accomplish more. I believe that men, when they find purpose, can achieve things that they didn't think was possible. And you have these thoughts in your head, and then you also have that wall that hits you, right? Of like, man, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the skill. I don't have the talent. No one respects me enough. Everyone who starts something new goes through these same thoughts, right? But for you to have the courage to try something new, I think is incredibly just powerful, a testament to who you are. And so I'm glad that you're in this town. I'm glad you're back home. Man, awesome. I know you're doing all kinds of cool things. Bankin Festival is going to be amazing this year. Even you just saying, hey, it is growing. There was one food truck last year. There's going to be 5 or 6 this year. There was 1 or 2 bands last year. There's going to be a half dozen this year.
That's right.
Vendors increase. I think if we snap our fingers 10 years from now, you've been in Chattanooga. They've got the Moon River, I think, festival.
That's right. Oh, man,
right?
It's a great one.
I fully believe that
Holcomb.
the people who are organizing this are capable of doing something to that scale. So keep it up, man.
I couldn't agree with you more, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, hey, lightning round questions that I've not prepped you on. So we're here. We're just going to go. Favorite place to spend a weekend with your family? I know you're adventurous. You like to get out and do stuff. That's within driving distance of Clarksville. So if you're like, hey, we've got 2 days, like we're going to go do this within driving distance, what's at the top of your list?
I'm probably a little biased, but Chattanooga.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know it's
we've
fun,
got roots
right?
there. That's
Yeah.
where me and my wife met, and yeah, just a ton of great activities to do that are outside, which I love.
I love that. Do you have a favorite food truck in Clarksville?
Ooh, is it Fat Boy Tacos? Yeah, that one. That one's great.
I know.
Usually they're at Eastgate on Thursdays. I want to say Eastgate. Well,
if you know the schedule,
if you know
then you love
Eastgate
them.
Bowling, then you know you've been around.
Yes,
I don't know what it's called now. It's something different. Right beside
fine.
Rudy's Diner.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one. All right. If you had to challenge someone who's on the coalition right now to a wrestling match, who do you have the best chance of handling?
Oh, I mean,
all of them.
I'll smoke all those punks. They're all chumps. No, I'm just playing. I buried my wrestling shoes a long time ago.
Yeah, whatever. When your kid gets old enough to like give you a challenge, you're gonna be the dad that's like you see with like 3 broken fingers one day. Like, man, I went too far. Like I could beat this little kid for 10 years in a row, and he really got me this last time.
No,
so
man, we got some tough guys in our group for sure.
Yeah. All right. So you're the dreamer of the coalition.
Oh, God.
If you could have one music artist as just like, this is my ultimate dream, if I could ever book them at Bankin, this is when I will just lose my mind. Who could it be?
Oh, I mean, that's a hard thing to put on. Someone that I think's like realistically someone we could get. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. Golly, why am I doing this right now? Oh, you caught me off guard. Okay, well, I'll go to someone unrealistic.
Right.
Realistically, Coldplay would be amazing. Like, if you don't like Coldplay, just get on.
Yeah.
And I feel like Coldplay relates to everyone. Oh my gosh! But there's a folk, like bluegrass type folk singer. Jeez, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I messed
well,
up.
So
but
now
we could go with like Billy Strings.
Okay.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
And I think we could get that.
Yeah.
We could make that happen.
Well, don't limit yourself. You've already accomplished more than you thought you could. You never know.
Although I actually called about one of those, like a Billy String. And it's like, I mean, it's like 50,000 plus.
Well,
but hey, Clarksville can make it happen.
Moon River, I looked it up. It's like 20 to 25,000 people, and they're not all Chattanooga people that attend that. So, I mean, you keep doing this long enough, you keep doing the great things that you do, you never know what the possibilities are going to be. So,
thank you for that encouragement.
Keep it up, man. Well, hey, if you have made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much. I know you found a lot of value in what Dillon is doing, what his friends are doing with the coalition. But hey, mark your calendars if you're consuming this before Bankin Festival this year, 2022. And if you happen to find this another month, another year, whatever, find their website, Google it, get all the information you can, because I can tell you right now, this thing is going to be successful enough that it is a mark your calendar kind of event where you plan vacations around it because you want to be in town, you want to be a part of it. Thank you so much. Any way that you can interact with us, like, subscribe, share a comment, share this with a friend. If you have some knucklehead that you know who's on the coalition, make sure they hear the good stories that Dillon shared about them, so share it with them as well. Thanks so much. I'm Kevin Kennedy, Clarksville Vibe the Show. We'll see you next time.